Okay, welcome to part 2 of the basic continuity editing lecture. In the last video we talked about what continuity editing was and how you can arrange the sequence of events, how you can arrange those different clips and shots in different orders to actually give different meaning. This video we're going to talk about how continuity works with what audiences expect when they're watching your film, and also how acceleration editing works. So let's check some things out. Continuity editing, first it guides the audience through the event, but also it shows them what they want to see and when they want to see it. So that's really, really key. Audiences expect certain things. When you're imagining a scene in your head, you expect certain things as you're imagining it, and audiences expect that too. And so if you're going to frustrate the audience's expectation, you have to have a really good reason for it. So let's check out a quick scene here. Right now we have Monty and Ryan, and they're talking about a camera. And if we play this scene, so let's imagine we're watching some kind of news story and Monty's explaining all of these different camera features to Ryan. He's talking about what each of these camera features does and where you can find them and how they work and everything else. And what, right now, as you're watching the scene, what are you expecting to see that you're missing right now? What's driving you crazy, or what's difficult with watching the scene? So if you're like most people, what you're expecting to see that you're not seeing right now is you're expecting to see some close-ups on the things that Monty's talking about, right? You're expecting to see these different parts of things that he's explaining, and you want to see him close up, because it's not very useful to watch him pushing buttons when you can't even see the buttons right now. So what's missing right now is a close-up, like different close-ups on the camera. That's something the audience expects to see. And if you don't provide the audience with that, you're not really doing a good job as a filmmaker, because instead of watching the content, instead of looking at what Monty's saying and what Ryan's thinking and everything else, all we're doing is wondering why we don't get to see this part of the camera, right? It's pulled us away from the story of the movie and made us think about the whole thing, the scenes and the cameras and everything else. And that's bad filmmaking, because it takes away from the story when you don't show the audience what they expect to see. Now, sometimes you can do that in a way that actually is intentional, that doesn't show the audience what they expect to see because there's a good reason for it. So let's take a look at this. Say this is the beginning of a movie, or a mystery movie.
Come in.
Right? So Monty heard a knock at the door, he said, "Come in," and then all of a sudden he sees someone clearly, and he's very, very upset and nervous about it, but we don't see who he sees. Now, what we want to see, of course, is what he's looking at, right? When you see someone reacting in a film, you want to see what they're reacting to. You expect that to be the next thing that you see. But sometimes you don't see it, right? Because that's part of the mystery of it. And so if you do this intentionally, if you don't show the audience what they want to see intentionally, then you can create a good sense of mystery and suspense. However, if you just, forget to include that shot, then you're just frustrating the audience. So the important idea is that unless you're trying to leave them hanging, include the shots that the audience expects to see. The easiest way to do this that I can think of is to simply imagine the scene in your head, and then figure out what all those shots and angles are that you're imagining, write them down, and make sure that you actually go and get them. And then go ahead and get a few more extra ones just in case. So acceleration editing is another part of continuity editing, right? And this is the idea that when we watch things in order, we jump to conclusions as we're watching. We don't have to watch everything of what happens, right? So say someone is going to go on a date and they get on the phone, they say, "Hey, I'll meet you at 10, and then, they need to pick out their clothes, they need to shower, they need to put on makeup, etc., right, to get ready for this date. Then that would take an entire 90 minutes. That would be the length of watching a movie just to watch this person get ready for a date. So we don't actually usually show all of that, right? We only show a couple of clips, right? We show maybe them getting off the phone, and then we show them pulling some clothes out of the closet, and then we show them finishing their makeup, and then we show them getting into a car, right? Or we just show them hanging up the phone and then arriving at the date, right? We cut out the boring stuff, basically. And then we show a couple of edits to speed up the time so we know what's going on, but we don't have the whole thing. The audience uses logic to figure out what happened, right? When we're looking at something, we just use some logic and we're like, oh, well, clearly this must have been why this thing happened. So let's look at a couple of examples of that. So in this example, we have Monty. He's taking a test, or writing something, or thinking about something. comes up with an idea, and then all of a sudden he's at the computer. Now, clearly, he didn't actually just teleport himself over to the computer, right? He had an idea, and then we assume he walked over to the computer and started working on it, right? And now here he is with a finished paper that he's handing to his teacher, and his teacher's giving him a thumbs up, right? So we assume that what he was working on the computer was that paper, that he finished that paper, printed it out, and handed it to the teacher, right? All of those things are acceleration editing. We didn't watch him do any of those things, but because of the order in which the shots were placed, then we assume that that's what happened. So that's what acceleration editing does. Here's another pretty simple example.
I'll be there in 10 minutes.
So Monty's on the phone, he says he'll be there in 10 minutes, and the next shot he is outside walking to this door. We assume that where he is walking is there, and what time he's walking is 10 minutes later, because that's what we've heard. So those are two pretty decent examples of acceleration editing. If you want to really think about this, and if you want to continue with your notes on this, try to think of some other ways that we could speed up time. What are some other places where we never show the boring stuff in the middle there? Right? What are those other sequences or other scenes where that happens? Go ahead and finish your notes for this part. We're going to move into a sort of little mini thing about expanding time and suspense for a second, and then we'll come back and finish this lecture in part 4.